I'm Randy Rohde, and I'm fascinated with entrepreneurs and small business owners. Plus, I love baseball. Every show, I sit down with a small business owner, and we discuss their running the bases of entrepreneurship. We throw the ball around on strategy, management, execution, and innovation. Plus, a little fun baseball talk. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Settle in, grab your Cracker Jacks, and you know what they say.
Play ball.
All right, it's a great day for a ball game, and today we have something really spectacular we're going to discover. But let me get into the intro here. Today's guest is a self-professed terrible employee, and probably could fall into that same category. On any given Monday morning, when others are brushing their weekends off to get back into the office grind, he is most likely still out in the mountains in Utah, where he lives with his wife and 5 kids. He's an extreme sports enthusiast. Today's guest is an avid backcountry skier and mountain biker. His helmet cam videos of him racing down the slopes can certainly give you whiplash just from watching. And when he's not on the mountain, you might find him at the lake, boating, windsurfing, or even flying around with a jetpack, just like Iron Man. Man, you got all the toys. He has a lot of time to spend with his family and his hobbies. And when he's not doing all of that, he is running his very successful business. He created the world's largest website for finding virtual assistants, or VAs, in the Philippines. His company has over 1 million resumes and currently has over 500,000 employers worldwide using it. And his goal is to help all entrepreneurs live like him. That sounds fun. I think I mind trying that. So please welcome the founder and CEO of OnlineJobs.PH, John Jonas. John, welcome, man. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
Man, you've got all of the toys. So right now you're like in the midst of winter season. So how is the snow season and skiing out in Utah right now?
This has been the best season that I have ever experienced so far. I've skied like 35 times since October. I mean, our first day was October 24th. And
wow.
That's all I've done.
That is amazing. I don't know. So I know the West Coast, like California, has gotten a ton of that, that storm, the rain and snow up in the mountains. Are you getting impacted by that as well with the snow in the mountains?
Yes, for sure. Like nice. We're probably at and we're in our top 5 years ever since they started tracking so far.
Wow.
So,
well, good for you, because I'm sure you're out there, you're enjoying it 35 times. I probably haven't gone 35 times in my life, let alone this season. So before we get into Online Jobs PH, I have to talk with you about your summer. You did something that I would love, love, love to do. My research team calls it the Utah Von Jonas Family European Biking Tour. That is crazy. So you took a month off with your family, clad in matching clothing. I didn't get to watch this, but Kathy on her team was like, hey, you got to see this stuff. Clothing, cycled around Europe for, a month? You got to give me the info on this. This is incredible. Some of the stuff, she did show me some images of some of the places I think that you went. So where did you go? How did you get there? How did you put this whole thing together?
So we're a big cycling family. We're a big outdoor family. Our mountain bikes lead to skiing in the winter and back to mountain bikes. I mean, my kids are riding their bikes, preparing for races. I mean, it's January 10th and they're on their bikes consistently outside.
Nice.
And so last summer we took our bikes and our 5 kids to Europe. I have 2 littles who are 9 and 11. Actually, they were 8 and 10 at the time. And so I bought e-bikes for them so they could keep up with the rest of us.
All right.
And then we flew into Paris and we rode east and went into Germany and south to Switzerland and east through the Austrian Alps and back into Germany and back east to, you call us the Von Jonas family. So we went to Salzburg, Trap family was in Sound of Music, and saw some of their stuff and a little bit more of the Austrian Alps, and ended up at a World Cup mountain bike race, which was really amazing for us. We didn't have a car. We took a couple trains, but really we just rode our bikes every day.
That is incredible.
Every day we would plan the next hotel.
Did you get to see any of the, I'm a big cycling fan. I love watching professional cycling. So did you get to see any of the Tour de France? Was it that time season or?
It wasn't that time.
Okay.
And we were early. We did ride through a couple cities that the tour passed through this year.
Yeah.
Which was then cool for my kids. Like, my kids have never been interested in the Tour de France. But then this year, having been to some of these places, they were interested, which was really, really cool.
Oh, that is cool. Oh, man, I love it. Love the idea. So here's the big question. I'm sure everybody, the listeners are like, what? Great trip. How were you able to take a month off from work? I mean, it's not like you have a small little operation going on here. You're running a successful company. How could you take a month off and go cycle around Europe?
Yeah, so I didn't take a laptop with me, which is like the biggest, like the biggest shock that people hear. I did not have I just have my phone.
Wow.
So I have people. I have a really good team that works for me. They're all in the Philippines. I don't have any U.S. based employees. They're all in the Philippines, and the only thing I had to do was keep up on my newsletter, which I was like 3 weeks ahead when I started, and so I only had to write a couple of them while I was there. And realistically, I don't write my newsletter. Someone in the Philippines writes it for me in my voice, and I just edit a little bit or add to it. And so, every day I was able to check email and see like, oh, what's going on, or is anything urgent, or can I respond to someone? But then the actual work, I'm not doing it. So like, whatever, I don't know who's doing your research, but I don't have Instagram or Facebook on my phone. So I never did that, whatever posts were made.
Okay.
So
other people are living your life for you. Well, that is amazing. So good for you. We're going to get into, certainly when you talk about your staff that located there in the Philippines, but I want to get a little bit more on the background. So your background, computer science degree from BYU, programmer, developer, worked for some companies doing that kind of work. And then at some point you realized, I want to go do my own thing. I want to go be an entrepreneur. I want to go play more golf, right? How did you end up kind of getting into this business, into this business for yourself?
So like you said, I'm a terrible employee, and I had a job for 8 months out of college. I was a programmer. That was the only job I've ever had. And the incentive structure just didn't work for me, where like, if I did great work, sweet, I got paid the same amount. If I did terrible work, didn't matter, I got paid the same amount. And that was like, it works really well for a lot of people. It didn't work for me. It wasn't an incentive to me. And so I started working, trying to do some stuff online. I had something that was making a tiny bit of money. I had some consulting work that I was doing for other people. And one day, every day, my wife would call me and say, "Oh my gosh, you just missed the cutest thing that your son did." And I'm at work and I hated it.
Yeah,
I
that's
hated
the worst.
it. I liked my job, but I hated being away from my kids. And I had the chance, and I just told my wife one day, "Hey, this is it. This is the chance. I'm quitting." And she said, "You have 6 months. You have 6 months to make this work. If not, you're going to get a job." Because she was raised that way. Like, find someone with a good education, with a good stable job, with good benefits, and it wasn't me. And her parents then warned her, like, "You have to be really careful with this, right?" And so I go out on my own, and things are working. It's not like I'm making tons of money, but I'm making about the same as I was at my job.
Now, what were you doing when you went out on your own? Were you doing consulting, doing just kind of odd programming jobs, kind of freelancing almost?
So I had 2 different programming consulting things that were like some number of hours a week, and they were paying me really, really well.
Okay.
Which was sweet. I had no debt. Like, we didn't have a car payment. We owned our house, but our house payment was like $750 a month, and we had finished the basement and rented it out for $500 a month. Nice. So, like we had so little debt.
Yeah.
No credit cards, no toys, nothing.
It just makes life so much easier. It gives you freedoms. What I tell my kids, having money is freedom is what it does for you. It doesn't, and if you're not in debt,
debt is like really like enslaving.
Yes.
Like if you have debt payments, you can't take the risk of quitting.
Yeah.
And so that I've taught my kids that really well. Like debt does not allow you to make choices that you want. Savings does. Having savings gives you freedom to make choices.
Yep. So
I start trying. I mean, I knew I needed help in my business. I'm working more now than I was before, right? Like I quit the 9 to 5 to work 24/7.
Yeah. Even though you were at home, but
right. I'm at home. So like I'm with my kids, which is sweet, but I'm working so much more, which,
right.
I think so many people have this experience where like, oh, I'm going to work on my own. I'm going to be my own boss. And as your own boss, you work so much and so hard to try and build. And I just knew I needed help. And so I started trying to hire people. I hired people locally, and it didn't work very well. The first thing they did was quit. Like, oh, you're making money online and this is what you're doing? Like, oh, I can do that. And I hired people in India, and that was kind of a mess. And I hired people off of Upwork. Actually, it wasn't Upwork at the time. It was Elance. It was before Upwork existed, but Elance turned into Upwork. And I thought like, oh, this is amazing. This is going to be it. And I paid the dude, and he went off and got another job. And then it wasn't done right, I realized. And it was too late because he was off getting another job, that's how the Upwork system is built. Like it's based on turnover.
Right.
Like you have to turn people over because they have to get a review so they can get another job that's higher paying so they can get a review. And it just didn't work for me. And I was so frustrated. And someone gave me a really good tip. Like, hey, when you're ready to start outsourcing some of this stuff, make sure you go to the Philippines with it. And I was like, what? What? Like outsourcing is just outsourcing. It sucks. And it's a headache and it's a problem. And he told me differently. And he gave me a reference to where I could hire someone full time. And to me, that was a problem because I didn't want someone full time. I just wanted someone hourly or per project. And that's not what he gave me. And so I didn't do it for a couple of months. And I finally was like, well, it doesn't really matter if I can afford this person, or it doesn't really matter if they can't do great work, or if I can't keep them busy full time. I can't keep doing what I'm doing. It's too much. And so I took the leap and I hired this guy through this agency, which was the reference that this guy had given me, and full time. And it was the most liberating experience of my life. All of a sudden I had this dude who I had to keep him busy full time, and he was willing to do anything I was willing to teach him. And I had 40 hours a week of work that he would do. And I think I was paying the agency like $700 a month, maybe $750 a month, and they were paying him $250 a month. So he was making $250 a month full time, which I didn't know that at the time.
Right.
But that was like completely life-changing to me, to find someone that was sticking around and willing to work and intelligent. And he didn't know anything. He wasn't talented, but he was intelligent and willing to try really hard.
Ah. And so I guess it kind of germinated with you in that out of your own need, and you pursued, offshoring source, some resources for you, for assistant. When was the moment that you were like, here is an opportunity?
So I was part of a mastermind group at the time, and we would meet every week, and there were like 15 of us on the phone, and it was awesome. It was so good. And at one point we found the group just talking about my people in the Philippines. I had 2 of them. They just wanted to talk about my people in the Philippines over and over and over again. How are you doing this? How's it working so well? What's going on? And I was like, dude, we've talked about this like 6 times now. And finally I recorded an audio of, here's what's going on. Here's how I'm doing this. Here's what's going on. And I put it on my website, on my blog, and it went crazy. And then these people in my mastermind group started asking me to teach their audiences about it. And I wasn't selling anything. So I like created something that I was like, I can sell something. Like I have a bunch of trainings that I've created for my guys, and let me sell this to, I'll make these available to you guys. And after a year or so of doing that, finding people was really hard. You had to go through an agency, and I wanted to recruit someone myself because the agency said, well, do you want a webmaster or a programmer? I was like, well, I want a content writer. Well, do you want a webmaster or a programmer? Like, fine, I'll take a webmaster. And that was the moment when I wanted to recruit someone for myself.
Right.
I was like, there's a better way. I think I could build like a job board and get a couple hundred resumes into it. And that was my vision at the time. I'm not very visionary. Like I could get a couple hundred resumes into this, and then I could recruit someone myself. Like I would have a couple of programmers, and that would be sufficient. And I would have a couple of good content writers, and that would be sufficient. And that was my thoughts.
Yeah, it was like, I have a need, which will be great. I should be able to for that, and maybe a couple of my friends. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I went back to the agency and said, I'll take a programmer. And I hired this programmer and had him build OnlineJobs.PH, the first version of it. And so then I went to my team, which I think my team was like 5 or 6 at the time. And I said to them, hey, what can we do to like market this? How could we get people to put their profiles in? And they were like, oh, I could tell my friends. I could put it on my Friendster, which was a social media network at the time. I could put it on classified ads. That was the extent of what we did. And we had a couple hundred profiles the first month. And today, so you mentioned 1 million profiles. We actually just passed 2 million profiles.
Oh my gosh, really? Wow.
Yeah, and it just exploded. And that's like the history story of OnlineJobs.PH.
And so now, so that's a great story. 2 million profiles is amazing. So what average person, I am familiar with your site, with your services. I actually have used it in the past. I've know a lot of people in my industry who utilize it. But in your, I guess, presentation of OnlineJobs.PH, what is it? How does it work? What's the scope, I guess?
So I built exactly what I wanted to find. I didn't want a middleman. I didn't want this agency telling me who I could and couldn't find. And then I didn't want them triple marking up the salary. I mean, when I found out I'm paying them $750, they're paying him $250. And when he found out, we both found out the same day. And I was like, that totally sucks for him. And it's not the worst thing for me, but it just doesn't sit super well, right?
Right.
So we built a platform where you can come in and search profiles, which turned out to be so amazing. Like you go on and search podcast editor. And you'll find hundreds of people who are super talented at it. And this was the big thing that we did. We made it so you can contact them. Contact them right now. Or you can post a job and have people apply and contact you. And so, when we had 1,000 profiles, that was pretty sweet. When we had 10,000 profiles, that was sweet. You come on, you pay $69 to access the database. And then you can contact whoever you want. Right. You post your job, you could get a dozen applicants, you could get hundreds of applicants. And then you're going to interview them just like I wanted. I wanted to interview them myself. I wanted to pick the right person because hiring, this is an interesting thing I didn't realize at the time, but so this agency was just pulling people off the street, basically. They're pulling someone off the street, giving them very little training and saying, here's your webmaster.
Right.
And what I later realized was you're not hiring a skill, you're hiring a person. And that person has a personality and they have a workflow and a work style. And does that workflow style work for you? Well, when someone else is recruiting for you, you just don't know. And then especially, so like that first person that I hired from the agency still works for me today. That was 2005 when I hired him, right? Our personalities mesh. It's super awesome. And when I hired him, he knew nothing, and today he's amazing.
That's incredible.
And so with Online Jobs, you get to interview, you get to make the choice, you get to negotiate salary. We do not take a markup or a cut. We don't force you to work in our system. You get to, as soon as you contact them, you can take them out of OnlineJobs.PH just into your personal email and communicate directly with them. Like it's like Indeed.com, for the Philippines and way, way, way cheaper.
Right. That is amazing. I'm so impressed that your first guy is still with you. I mean, that just had to be almost a little bit of fluke and some destiny probably, because think about the odds that you would land with a guy who just...
Okay.
Worked.
Hold on a second. Yeah. So it's neither fluke nor destiny.
Okay.
So I have someone that I hired in 2007. He built Online Jobs. He's the first. He still works for me. I have someone that I have people that I hired in 2009 and 10 and 11 and 12. They all still work for me. I think I have 38 people right now, and I've probably hired 50 people over the years. That's my turnover rate. And some of that is the culture of the Philippines, where they're super duper loyal. As long as you treat them well, they're super, super loyal.
Great people.
And then some of that is my management style in treating them well. There's this really interesting cultural thing that exists in the Philippines that really kind of doesn't exist elsewhere, that allows for people to have long-term workers, stability with them that are super affordable. Because I'm definitely not the only one that has people. I mean, I talk to people every day that like, oh, I hired my person 2 years ago and they're still with me and they're amazing. Oh, I have had these people for 7 years. Or like it's not uncommon at all, which is a really big deal for small business.
Yeah. So that is kind of interesting, because I wonder, would it have worked, way back in time, if the person you were talking with gave you a lead to an agency, but it was in a completely different country, maybe over in the Middle Asia or somewhere, right? Yeah. Do you think it would have worked the same? No. Or do you think, the experience with the Filipinos, their culture, that it just works?
I get asked every week, hey, John, will you start this business in Cambodia? Will you start this in Ghana? No, I won't. And it's not that you can't find good people elsewhere. You definitely can.
Right. Yeah, sure.
But the chances of success are just so much higher in the Philippines. And there's a reason that we see the world's outsourcing going to the Philippines now. Like when you call a call center, you don't get India anymore. You get the Philippines. And I've watched that change over the last 12, 13 years, where people have woken up to the Philippines is super westernized. They watch American TV. English is mandated as the primary language of the Philippines. Even though they speak Tagalog, they also speak English. And like you'll never have a communication problem there. And they are super duper pleasing by nature. They want to make you happy. That's part of it. They look up to foreigners, which is super different than elsewhere, where, they're not entrepreneurial. They don't want to steal your idea or your business. So there's this like full set of cultural things that are different.
Yeah.
It's different than elsewhere in the world. And so I get asked all the time, hey, what about Brazil?
Right. Yeah.
Brazil's awesome. It's not the same.
Right. There's so many questions kind of pop into my mind here in regards to, I think, the model and the business itself. One of the things, though, that I find, and as you mentioned, that I find really attractive about your platform is that you don't handcuff either the profile or the potential employee or the employers. You don't handcuff them to your platform in the sense of be able to conduct whether it's communication or transactions or any of that. Like, you mentioned Upwork, so many of these other kind of platforms you can't do. They like, hey, you can't talk to these people outside of here. This is the only method, the only place.
Right.
And I find that really refreshing and as real nice opportunity, I think, for the businesses that would want to essentially utilize the services. How did you land on that as a concept or as the model rather than what so many of the other platforms, even at the time when you started, so many of that's You did something, I think, kind of completely opposite of what everybody else was doing and still do.
Well, it was what I wanted first. Didn't want to be Elance at the time. I didn't want to be tied into the platform where they're taking a cut. They're marking it up 20%. And so can you imagine if I'd paid this guy now for 22 years, no, 17 years, and the 20% that Upwork takes, like that's so much money that he doesn't get to improve his life.
Yeah.
So that was really the big thing. There was another website that was really small at the time that was similar to our concept. And that was like an impetus of like, okay, this is a good way where we could do this, where we can make this work. People pay up front. We give you full access. We're not going to charge on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
We'll guarantee you find someone good. You don't find someone good, we'll give your money back.
Right.
Super easy.
That is amazing. Well, I applaud you for that because I think it provides the opportunity for the employee to really improve their life. I think, as you even stated, it gives them freedom and really creates an opportunity. So I want to ask you, and I'm sure you've got so many different resources out there where people can tap into information and answer questions and kind of get an idea about how this potentially works. But just as when we're talking about VAs or virtual assistants, how do you know? How does a small business owner know if they're ready to hire a VA?
Okay, so I have a really good answer to that.
All right.
When you have something in your business that you know how to do, that you feel like you could teach someone else, you're ready to hire. So I've always found myself going against the grain. I don't do things the way that other people do or the way that people teach generally. And what most people will tell you is stick with what you're good at and outsource everything else. And I think that is terrible advice. I'm really good at programming. Should I stick with programming and outsource? Like I should outsource our marketing and outsource the CEO. And no, it doesn't work. You don't run a business like that, right? Oh, I'm really good at social media marketing. Well, social media marketing doesn't make money. Like making sales makes money, right? So you don't stick with what you're good at. You stick with what makes money and outsource the things that you know how to do that are taking your time. So when you have something in your business that you could teach someone else to do, that's the first person you hire. Hire someone to do that thing, teach them how to do it, get them good at it, get them doing it your way, or maybe they do it better than you would do it. And then you free up some time for yourself, which is unbelievably effective at growing your business because, well, where most entrepreneurs are is they're just mentally strapped. Like they're mentally on the edge. And it's really hard to work on your business when you're on the edge and when there's no more mental bandwidth. And if you can get yourself a little bit of mental bandwidth, everything becomes clearer. The path to growth becomes clear. The path to what should we work on? Where is our revenue coming from? All of it becomes clear when you get yourself a little bit of time and mental bandwidth.
Nice. That's great advice. Right there. How does all of the finances and the benefits, or if there are benefits that are provided for the employees, how does that all happen? So that all off platform?
Okay, so it's all off platform, number one. Number two, they're not employees. I call them employees, but they work for me full time. There is no way to classify them as an employee. They are an independent contractor. They don't have a U.S. tax ID number. There's no treaty with the Philippines requiring you to pay U.S. taxes or pay Filipino taxes for them. In fact, in the Philippines, you cannot pay their taxes for them. You can't do withholding. It's against the law. They are an independent contractor by Philippines government requirements. So any way you look at this, full-time, part-time, hourly, per project, whatever, they're an independent contractor.
All right.
You do not have any insurance or taxes or benefits or office space or utilities or any of that. On our taxes every year, we have a line item on our other deductions list that is subcontractors. We put their salary there. So, the salary is actually costing me like, I don't know, 40% less than it actually is, right? Than what I pay out because of the tax savings.
Right.
If you want to provide benefits for them, which I did not do this in the beginning. This took me many years before I started doing this. There are a number of things that you could do. Yeah. One of them is insurance, but there's a pre-insurance that you could do called PhilHealth, which is Philippines like socialized health insurance, kind of. It's like $10 a month, I think. Super, super cheap. Or you can provide their SSS, which is like their Social Security, which gives them all kinds of benefits like disability or maternity or their pension after they've contributed for a long time, or there's all kinds of stuff that you can give with SSS. You can provide private health insurance. We do it for our team. It costs us like $400 or $500 a year per person. So it's like way cheaper than in the US, for like full health insurance. So there's all kinds of things, you have paid time off that you can give. For us, we keep this as simple as possible. Paid time off. We say you can have as much paid time off as you want. We just want to know about it ahead of time if you can. If you're sick, just tell us when you can.
Right.
We don't care because I don't want to track it.
Right.
I don't want to give myself one more thing to do.
Yeah.
You want to take time off? Great, take time off. I don't care. Their time is so affordable. I have 38 full-time people. They make between $550 and $2,000 a month for full-time work. And at like $550, I have like lower skilled data entry or admin verification people. At the high end, I have like Facebook ads people or really high-end design or programming or, like really high-end stuff. And then I have everything in the middle, right? So it's the salaries are just super affordable. The benefits are super easy. And really, we don't pay any of their benefits. We just add it to their salary.
Right.
And say, you have to deal with this on your own, which they do. And then they send us a receipt to prove that they actually used it for
that's
whatever
a good way to do it. Sure. Wow. I want to dig back into this. I do, before we head off to the seventh inning stretch here, I do want to mention something. People can go onto your site on OnlineJobs.PH. You also have some other online resources and offers that are available for free for folks as they're thinking about virtual assistants and maybe jumping into that. One of which is OFStasks.com. What is that offer that you have over there, John?
Yeah, so let me, this is a really good chance to talk about virtual assistants.
Okay, sure.
I don't like the word. I don't like the acronym VA because people assume a virtual assistant is just an assistant. They're like a robot. They're kind of dumb. They can only follow exact instructions. They're not thinking. They can only do mediocre tasks, just data entry. And that's not who I hire. And that's not who you want to hire.
Right. Yeah.
I have these really talented programmers who built OnlineJobs.PH. And I have a really talented user interface designer. He's not a graphic designer. He's not a logo designer. In fact, I've had him do both those things. He sucks at it, but he is so good at user interface design, thinking through how does this work? How's someone going to interact, right? He's a specialist. I have someone that writes my newsletter. She's a content specialist. She's really, really good at it. Not so good at SEO, but she's really good at content. And so years ago, I stopped calling them virtual assistants because these are specialists and they're online and they're in the Philippines, and I call them OFS, Online Filipino Specialists. So OFStasks.com is the result of me asking like 100 employers, what do your OFS do for you? What are they doing? And getting responses back that were unbelievable.
Right.
Like the things that people have OFS doing for them. And I put it all together into a list and like categorized list by industry. And there's like 220, actually, we called it 221 tasks that OFS can do for you. like the new kind of virtual assistant, these more specialized, talented people. But we call it 221 because we stopped counting at 221. There were more. And it, like, when I looked at this, and actually, so I would email employers. I didn't write the book. Someone in the Philippines wrote it and combined all of these responses into these categories. And just this, when I read this thing, my jaw dropped. Number one, because it was so well done. Number two, because of the things that people have invented to have OFS do for them. I was shocked. And so it's available at ofstasks.com. It's free.
Nice. Great. All right. So folks, get over there at ofstasks.com. Go check that out. OnlineJobs.PH. Go check that out. Right now, John, it is time.
And it's time for the 7th inning stretch.
All right, we got the 7th inning stretch, John. Hopefully, do you like baseball? You don't have a team in Utah, but you do like baseball though to some extent. So you follow a team out on the coast or somewhere, or what?
I grew up in LA, so I grew up a Dodgers fan, and I mean the Angels weren't a thing when I was little, but as I got older, the Angels were cool.
Yeah. Nice.
And then obviously, like, Don Mattingly was around when I was collecting baseball cards, and so I was a Yankees and Angels and Dodgers, right? That doesn't really work, but you know.
Well, I used to live in LA way back, and I loved going to Dodgers games, but I'm a Cubs fan deep in my roots, so I'm always a Cubs fan. But all right, so my staff put together a question around Filipino MLB players, and I'm going to hit you up with the question here. There are about 16 current MLB players of Filipino descent tied with the MLB. About half of them are all pitchers, actually, which I think is interesting. Do you know who is the first Major League Baseball player born in the Philippines?
No clue. I have no clue.
He debuted, I'll give you this a little more, debuted with the Oakland Athletics in 1996. So it wasn't that long ago.
Dude, that's like prime time that's my senior year of high school. Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, even a California team, right? Bobby Chenard, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly, was the first player born in the Philippines and then was playing MLB. A lot of different players that connected descendants, parents, but yeah, Bobby Chenard.
That's cool.
Guy.
Cool. Yeah. Philippines isn't a big baseball country. They're also interesting. They're not a big soccer country either. They're a big basketball and boxing. Boxing because of Manny Pacquiao.
Oh, yeah.
But they're a really big basketball country.
No kidding.
They love the NBA. They have the PBA, the Philippines Basketball Association. Yeah, like they play basketball. Super, nice. And they're super short. It's really interesting.
In my mind, I was saying, that's kind of interesting with basketball because I don't think my experience with Filipinos is they're not exceptionally tall. All right. Well, very good. Well, thank you for playing the 7th inning stretch. All right, let's get back into it.
Play ball.
So, John, I want to ask you, so you start out on this thing. You've got all of these profiles out on your site. What kind of challenges did you run into? Been some of the obstacles that you faced while you're building this massive site, helping thousands and thousands of people. But what were some of those things that you ran across at, like blockades, and how did you overcome it?
So the biggest obstacle that people always want to know is, how do you build both sides? It's a chicken and egg thing where you have to have employers and you have to have workers. How do you get them both? Well, I have done that with content because bringing employers to the site is harder than bringing the workers. The workers were really, really easy. And so our biggest challenge was having employers come, which for me, I was running podcasts and I was teaching people why and how the Philippines. And so I just super easily transitioned from saying, hey, here's this agency to here's online jobs.
Right.
So that was reasonable for me. But over the years, creating content and teaching has been the biggest thing that affected that part of our business. And so that's like the number one thing that I do is create content. Some other issues were like, employers always wonder, how do I trust this person? How do I know if I can trust this person? And that's a good question. You can't. And so over the years, I don't want to get scammed, right? That's people's biggest thing. I don't want to get scammed. So figuring out that we could not offer a free trial to employers was a really big deal towards getting rid of scams, because free trial, Craigslist, or any other website that offers a free access to hiring people, instantly creates scams where employers can scam workers. They can get them to work without paying them.
Right.
And then workers know that's the situation. So workers start scamming employers.
Right.
And we figured out that having it be paid upfront eliminates that almost 100%.
Right. And when you're saying paid upfront, really is not necessarily that the employer is paying and maybe it is, I don't know, but it's not necessarily. You're talking about just paid upfront for access.
Paid to access the system. Yeah. Don't ever pay your worker front. That's a no.
Right.
Pay them after they've done the work. But yeah, paying to access the system instantly eliminates almost all scam employers. And so the workers really respect it. And it's just a really, really good situation. And then finding how do we create trust from employers to workers? So like we've done a lot of stuff towards verifying workers. And we don't vet anybody, like we get 60,000 Filipino profiles a month right now. We're not interviewing them. We're not talking with them, but we do require them to verify their phone number, upload a government ID, upload a picture of themselves with their government ID, verify their address. So we do require like, you are who you say you are, verification, which really also goes a long ways towards preventing any sort of scams, because now we can easily ban you from the site if you're a problem, and then if you're a problem and you get banned, like you're permanently banned. And online jobs at 2 million profiles, it's like 8% of the workforce of the Philippines.
That's what
there's 100 million people.
I was just patching on my phone, like, what is the population of the Philippines?
Yeah, it's 100 million. Like from 18 to 55, it's like 8% of that population. And so, if you get banned, online jobs is pretty big.
Yeah. And
it's kind of a problem. Like your option now is to go to Upwork. You just lost 20% of your pay. That sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those have been some of the challenges that we've had.
So out of curiosity, sometimes bad things do happen, unfortunately, right? I always have told people in former careers that I've had, I've always stated like, well, sometimes you put things in place just to really prevent the bad things from happening. You're not gonna eliminate all of them all the time, but you just kind of put things in place, keep people honest. I think in general, people want to be honest. And so when you do some checks and balances, it makes it work. But sometimes bad things do happen. Do you or Online Jobs, do you have any liabilities at those instances when, whether an employer gets scammed, I hate using that word, but, the bad things happen to the employer or vice versa, the employee? I mean, what does your organization, because you kind of did the handshake?
Yeah, so we don't have any liability there. We do try and mediate. And, we often hear both sides and both sides are mad. We see very few instances of theft, like very, very few instances of theft. And almost all of them are because an employer didn't like the work that the worker did. There was a disagreement of like, was actually supposed to be delivered. It wasn't clear. So the worker's not getting paid. So now they're just trying to get paid. So we don't have any liability. We will, for a worker who doesn't get paid, we will offer them the amount of money that the employer has paid in accessing the database. It's not, that doesn't make up usually for what they lost, but it's something. So yeah, we don't really have any liability there.
All right. So I really like the platform, though, because I think you really are creating an opportunity for good people, employers, workers to kind of come together and really be a good operation, a good team together and execute on things. Do you have an idea? So say small business owner comes, utilizes the database, hires, settles on an employee, an OFS. How do they get them up to speed quickly? How do they get up that ramp as quick as possible to get them effective?
Yeah. So this is why I say that the first person you should hire should be someone to do something that you know how to do, because you know how to provide training to that person. And for me, the way I provide training, I use Snagit, which this is from Camtasia Studio. You could use Loom. Lots of people use Loom, or there's Tiny Take, which is free. And I'm going to create a screen recording video of myself walking through the process. And it's super, super effective. It lets them watch it multiple times. It lets them ask you questions. It's way faster than typing out an email and trying to explain. They get to see it. They get to hear your voice, which also goes a long ways towards treating them well. Like I talked about earlier, them gaining trust in you. So that initial training is a big deal. Filipinos, we often go into this thinking, I don't know if I can trust this person. They feel the same way.
Sure.
They don't know if they can trust you. Only their feeling is stronger than your feeling. So anything you can do to gain their trust is a big deal. And in terms of onboarding someone, that initial video of them hearing your voice, seeing that you're willing to provide some training is a big, big deal towards gaining their trust.
That's a great idea. Good. What's around the corner for online jobs? What's on the horizon?
So, we have a couple big changes coming for the communication process in interviewing, like messages. That there's a big change coming. I hope this week, but maybe not.
Oh, no. Coming. It's like, hey, any day now it's happening.
It's designed. It's been in the programming process. It's been in the works for a long time. We have a big change in the application process for workers that will allow employers to more easily see who is relevant to their job post, like instantly, which is really, really cool. We would love to get better at doing payments. Like right now we partner with Payoneer to pay people, or you can pay using PayPal or Wise.com or Western Union. We don't really care how you pay. We created Easy Pay, which partners with Payoneer. And it's good. It's as good as anything else. We would just like to do it better. Yeah. So that's something we would like to work on.
Nice. I always love the growth that happens. All right. So John, we're down here to the bottom of the ninth, where I get to ask all of our guests, what advice do you have for rookies in the game? Meaning those who are just starting out in business, or maybe who already have their business and are looking for some guidance. So an old veteran like you've been around, you've been operating a massive site, tremendous growth. What kind of advice do you have for new entrepreneurs?
So I have two things. Number one is provide value. Look at whatever it is you're doing and see and evaluate and say, am I providing value here? Is this something that someone can't get somewhere else, or I'm doing it better, or I'm adding to it? What's the value I'm adding? Because if you're not adding value, then you're wasting your time. Like if you're just drop shipping from, like something that someone can get any other place, well, you're not really adding value, right? And so it's really hard to run that kind of thing long term. So people always want to how do I make money as an affiliate? Well, you have to add value. You're not just going to slap something out there and have people make money from it. It's just not going to work. Add value. That's number one. Number two is when you're ready to hire someone to do something that you know how to do, it's a leap. Like it's not just, I have someone and so, okay, let me go. That is how simple it is, but usually it's a leap of faith for most people. I don't know if I can afford someone. Can they actually do good work? Can I actually find someone? I'm super busy. I can't really spend the 10 minutes to find someone. it's a leap. It's a leap of faith. And the only way you know if this works like I have said it does is if you try it.
Right.
And you have to take the leap.
Yeah. Great advice. I love the provide value. I think that is, well, that's a gold nugget right there. But I love that thought about provide value. And if you're not adding value, you're wasting time. And I think so much that is right on target. Good stuff. Well, listen, John, thanks so much for being on the show, for hanging out with us for a little bit, and wish you all the best of luck and success. And I know we are planning to go back and bring some people on board utilizing your services. So look forward to that. Maybe you'll see me in your database in there.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This has been fun.
Yeah, that's good. All right, folks, that's the ball game. Thanks for joining us today. And if you like our show, please tell your friends, subscribe and review, and we'll see you around the ballpark. Running the Bases with Small Businesses is brought to you by 38 Digital Market, a digital marketing agency committed to client growth with lead generation, higher conversions, and increased sales. Connect with us today at 38digitalmarket.com.